There's a unique kind of pain that comes when the people who were supposed to love us the most are the ones who wound us the deepest. Family betrayal shakes something at the core of who we are. It rattles our sense of belonging. It disrupts the stories we've told ourselves about love. And it often leaves us carrying the heavy burden of shame that was never ours to carry. And yet, so many of us keep holding on to broken narratives, to fractured relationships, to hope that one day things will magically become what we always needed them to be. But here's the truth. Healing doesn't come from clinging to what hurt us. Healing comes when we find the courage to let go. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It doesn't mean excusing betrayal or erasing the past. Letting go is about loosening the grip that pain has on our story so we can write a new one. It's about reclaiming our worth, honoring our boundaries, and stepping into a future that isn't defined by someone else's choices. Today, we're going to talk about the hard but liberating journey of letting go and finding freedom on the other side. The first step in healing after family betrayal is naming what happened. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things we'll ever do. Many of us are taught early in life to protect the family image, to keep secrets, and to minimize or deny harm. We're told things like, "That's just how they are," or "Don't make a big deal out of it," or "Family is everything." But when betrayal happens, when trust is broken, when loyalty is weaponized, when love is withheld or twisted, we carry the weight of that silence inside our bodies. Naming the hurt is an act of defiance against shame, because shame thrives in secrecy. When we don't name betrayal, it doesn't disappear. It festers. It shows up in the ways we distrust others, in the walls we build around our hearts, in the voice in our head that tells us we're not enough. Naming the hurt is not about blaming or getting stuck in victimhood. It's about telling the truth of our experience so that it no longer controls us from the shadows. Saying out loud, even to ourselves, "I was betrayed by someone I loved, and it hurt me," is a radical act of self-compassion. It shifts the story from "there's something wrong with me" to "something wrong was done to me." That distinction is everything. There's immense vulnerability in acknowledging betrayal, because it forces us to admit that the safety we thought we had wasn't real. That realization can shake our sense of identity and belonging to the core. But the paradox of courage is that once we dare to face that truth, we begin to reclaim our power. By naming the betrayal, we stop colluding with the lie that silence keeps us safe. Silence only keeps us stuck. This process doesn't require a confrontation. You don't need to march into your family's living room and announce what they did. Naming the hurt is first and foremost an internal act. It's looking in the mirror and refusing to gaslight yourself anymore. It's journaling the truth of what happened, without editing it to make others look better or to make yourself look less wounded. It's telling a trusted friend or therapist the story you've never dared to say out loud. And in doing so, you begin to break the cycle of shame that betrayal plants inside of us. The bravery of naming the hurt is that it honors reality. Pretending doesn't heal us. Minimizing doesn't protect us. Only truth-telling does. And while telling the truth might feel like ripping open a wound, it's actually the beginning of letting it breathe so it can finally start to heal. Think of it like cleaning out a deep cut, painful, messy, but necessary to prevent infection. When we name betrayal, we give ourselves permission to feel the grief, anger, and confusion that come with it. Those feelings are not signs of weakness, they are evidence of love and trust that mattered. We grieve because we cared. We rage because we expected better. We feel lost because we once thought we had a map, and now it's gone. Owning these emotions is part of naming the hurt. It validates the reality of our experience, and gives us a pathway toward integration. Ultimately, naming the hurt is about reclaiming authorship of our own story. Betrayal may be part of our past, but it doesn't have to define our future. The courage to name what happened creates space for us to write a new chapter. One where our worth is not determined by someone else's choices, but by our decision to live in truth, dignity, and self-compassion. Betrayal inside a family doesn't just break trust, it cracks at the very foundation of our sense of belonging. As human beings, we are wired for connection, and family is supposed to be our first safe haven, the place where we learn love, safety, and worthiness. When that bond is fractured, it doesn't just hurt, it shakes the story of who we are and whether we matter. What often sneaks in through that crack is shame. Shame is the voice that tells us, if they treated you this way, maybe you weren't worthy of their love in the first place. It convinces us that their betrayal is evidence of our inadequacy, rather than evidence of their own choices and limitations. The difference between shame and belonging is everything. Shame isolates us, telling us to shrink, to hide, to silence our truth, so we don't risk rejection again. Belonging, on the other hand, says, you are worthy of love and connection exactly as you are. It invites us to show up fully, flaws and all, and still know we have value. When family betrayal has occurred, the task of healing becomes untangling these two powerful forces, rejecting the lies of shame while learning to root ourselves in true belonging. True belonging is not about being accepted by people who refuse to honor our dignity. It's not about fitting into a family dynamic that asks us to betray ourselves in order to stay connected. Fitting in demands we twist, shapeshift, or silence our needs so we can maintain proximity. Belonging asks us to stand in our worth and say, I don't have to earn love, I am already enough. When we confuse fitting in with belonging, we will continue to tolerate betrayal, believing that staying in the circle of family, even at the cost of our own soul, is better than standing outside of it. But the truth is, belonging never requires us to abandon ourselves. One of the hardest lessons is realizing that belonging may not always be found within the family that raised us. For many, the deepest wound is recognizing that the place where we first sought unconditional love cannot or will not provide it. That realization hurts profoundly, but it also opens the door to reimagining belonging in new and life-giving ways. We can begin to discover belonging with people who see us, who honor our boundaries, who delight in our presence, rather than demand our silence. And perhaps most importantly, we can begin to belong to ourselves. Belonging to ourselves means refusing to let shame write the script of our worthiness. It means meeting our own reflection with compassion instead of criticism. It means building a home inside ourselves that cannot be taken away by anyone else's betrayal. This is not easy work. It requires unlearning the messages we internalized from broken family systems and practicing the radical belief that we deserve to be loved without condition. The paradox is that when we stop chasing belonging in places where betrayal has rooted itself, we often discover new depths of freedom. We begin to notice relationships outside of family, friends, mentors, partners, chosen family, that offer the kind of connection we've always longed for, and we learn that these relationships aren't less real or less valid because they aren't bound by blood. Sometimes chosen belonging is the most authentic form of all because it's rooted in mutual respect, care, and freedom. Healing from family betrayal doesn't mean erasing the hurt. It means refusing to let shame convince us that betrayal defines us. Our worthiness is not up for debate. True belonging begins the moment we decide that no one gets to diminish our value, not even the people who share our last name. Forgiveness is a word that often gets tangled up with reconciliation, but they are not the same thing. When we are betrayed by family, the pressure to forgive can feel suffocating. as though forgiveness is the ticket back into the relationship or the only way to prove we've moved on. But true healing requires us to separate the concept of forgiveness from the expectation of returning to unsafe dynamics. Sometimes forgiveness is not about letting someone back in. It's about letting ourselves stop carrying the poison of resentment. And to do that, we must learn the role of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the lines that protect our integrity, our energy, and our sense of self. In the aftermath of betrayal, boundaries become a form of self-compassion. They are the way we tell ourselves, I deserve safety, I deserve respect, and I deserve to stop being harmed. Without boundaries, we leave the wound open to be cut again and again. With boundaries, we give ourselves the space to heal and the permission to choose who gets access to us. Many of us have been taught that boundaries are selfish, especially when it comes to family. We hear things like, but that's your mother, or family is family no matter what. These messages shame us into believing that to protect ourselves is to abandon our loved ones. But the truth is the opposite. Refusing to set boundaries when someone continues to harm us is a betrayal of ourselves. Boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of compassion, both for us and for others. They make clear what we will and will not tolerate, and they invite healthier, more honest relationships to form. Setting boundaries after betrayal is rarely easy. It may mean saying no to family gatherings where we know we'll be mistreated. It may mean reducing contact, or in some cases, stepping away entirely. It may mean asking hard questions about what respect looks like and holding firm when those lines are crossed. Each of these choices can feel heavy, especially when family members don't understand or when they accuse us of being cold, ungrateful, or unforgiving. But boundaries aren't about changing other people's behavior. They're about changing the way we allow others to impact us. There's grief in this process. When we set boundaries, we're often confronted with the reality that the relationship may never look the way we wanted it to. We have to let go of the fantasy that if we just keep trying harder, keep forgiving, keep enduring, the person who betrayed us will suddenly choose differently. Boundaries force us to accept reality, and that acceptance is painful. But it's also profoundly liberating, because once we accept what someone is capable of, we stop expecting them to be who they're not. We stop setting ourselves up for repeated heartbreak. Boundaries are also a declaration of dignity. They tell the world that we believe we are worthy of protection and care. They give us back a sense of control in a situation where control was taken from us. And over time, boundaries create the conditions for real healing. They allow us to live with open hearts without leaving ourselves unguarded to the same betrayal again and again. Choosing boundaries as self-compassion is one of the most courageous acts we can take after family betrayal. It's not about pushing people away forever. It's about creating space where trust can grow if it's possible, or where we can heal in peace if it's not. Boundaries give us the freedom to stop bleeding where the wound was made and to start building a life that honors our worth. Grief is one of the most misunderstood parts of healing after family betrayal. When we think of grief, we often connect it to death, the loss of someone we love. But betrayal within a family carries its own kind of death. It is the death of the family we thought we had, the death of the safety we believed was ours, the death of the story we longed to live. When we are betrayed, we lose not only the relationship as it existed, but also the dream of what it could have been. That loss deserves mourning just as much as any other. The challenge is that this grief is often invisible. Society doesn't give us rituals for mourning a living parent who refuses to acknowledge our pain, or a sibling who turns their back when we need them most. There is no funeral for the family dinners we wished would feel safe, No condolence cards for the childhood we longed for, but never had, because the grief isn't recognized. We often try to bury it, pretending that we're fine, but grief denied doesn't disappear. It lingers in our bodies, showing up as exhaustion, bitterness, or numbness. Naming this grief and allowing ourselves to feel it is a vital step toward freedom. Grieving betrayal means giving ourselves permission to acknowledge what we lost. It might mean crying for the parent who was never able to love us unconditionally. It might mean feeling anger for the sibling who chose cruelty over loyalty. It might mean sitting with the ache of realizing that certain milestones, holidays, weddings, birthdays will not include the kind of support or joy we had imagined. These emotions can feel overwhelming, but they are signs that we are honoring the truth of our experience instead of silencing it. The process of grief is not linear. Some days we may feel acceptance and peace, while other days the pain rushes back, as if it happened yesterday. This fluctuation does not mean we're failing at healing. It means we are human. Grief ebbs and flows like the tide, and each wave carries us a little further along the shore of acceptance. When we allow ourselves to feel the grief instead of resisting it, we gradually build the strength to carry it with more ease. There is also growth hidden inside grief. As we mourn the family we wished we had, we begin to see more clearly the resilience we've developed. Surviving betrayal teaches us how deeply we can endure, how strong our spirit truly is. Grief can crack us open, but in those cracks we often find compassion, courage, and clarity that weren't visible before. We begin to recognize that our longing for love is not weakness, it is proof of our humanity. And when we grieve fully, we create space to receive love in new and healthier forms. One of the hardest but most important parts of grieving is letting go of the fantasy that things will one day magically change. Hope can keep us tethered to the very dynamics that harm us, convincing us to wait just a little longer, to give just one more chance. But grieving means saying goodbye, not only to the betrayal itself, but to the illusion that the past could ever be rewritten. It means accepting reality as it is, even if it's not what we wanted. That acceptance is not resignation. It is the beginning of freedom. In the end, grief is not our enemy. It is the pathway that leads us from pain to growth, from denial to truth, from longing to acceptance. When we embrace grief as part of healing, we honor both what we lost and what we are becoming. Through grief, we do not erase the betrayal, but we allow it to transform us into people who can live with more clarity, compassion, and courage than before. When betrayal happens within a family, love can begin to feel distorted. The very place where we were supposed to learn tenderness, safety, and acceptance becomes the place where we instead learn conditional affection, silence, or rejection. Over time, this experience can teach us to question love itself, what it is, whether we deserve it, and whether it can ever be trusted again. Healing requires us to do something both terrifying and liberating. Reimagine love. This doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't shape us. It means choosing not to let betrayal be the final definition of what love means in our lives. Reimagining love begins with ourselves. After family betrayal, it's easy to internalize the idea that we are difficult to love, or that something about us provoked the harm. The truth is that betrayal is never evidence of our unworthiness. It's evidence of someone else's inability to love in a healthy way. To reimagine love, we must reclaim the belief that we are worthy of kindness, respect, and care simply because we exist. This is where self-love stops being a cliché and becomes a lifeline. It's the practice of showing up for ourselves with compassion when shame wants us to disappear, of speaking to ourselves with tenderness when the old voices of criticism get loud. But reimagining love doesn't stop at the self. It also means widening our definition of family and connection. For many of us, the most profound healing comes not from the people who share our blood, but from those who choose us. Friends who listen without judgment, mentors who guide without strings attached, partners who hold our hearts with care. These are the relationships that remind us what real love feels like. Chosen family doesn't diminish the importance of biological ties. It expands our understanding of how many ways love can arrive. When we allow ourselves to lean into these chosen bonds, we begin to see that love is abundant, not scarce. Reimagining love also requires us to let go of the belief that love means tolerating harm. Too often, family dynamics teach us that love looks like endurance, staying quiet, overlooking wounds, sacrificing ourselves to keep the peace. But true love doesn't ask us to disappear. Real love supports growth, honors boundaries, and holds space for honesty. When we reimagine love, we start asking a different set of questions in our relationships. Does this connection honor my humanity? Do I feel safe being my authentic self here? Am I respected even when I say no? These questions shift the focus from trying to earn love to recognizing whether love is being offered in a way that is healthy and sustainable. The courage to reimagine love is also the courage to risk vulnerability again. Betrayal can make us want to close the door forever, to protect ourselves by staying walled off, and while boundaries are essential, walls that never come down keep us from experiencing the beauty of new, nourishing relationships. Reimagining love means slowly, carefully, opening ourselves to the possibility that trust can be rebuilt, not necessarily with those who betrayed us, but with others who have shown they are safe. Vulnerability becomes a practice of hope, not denial. Ultimately, reimagining love is about refusing to let betrayal have the last word. It's choosing to believe that love exists beyond the pain, that we are worthy of it, and that we have the power to define what it looks like moving forward. Love after betrayal may never look like the fairy tale we once imagined, but it can be deeper, truer, and more life-giving, precisely because it's built on the foundation of truth, courage, and choice. To reimagine love is to say, I am no longer bound by the definitions handed to me by betrayal. I am free to create my own story of connection, belonging, and care, and in that story, love is abundant, safe, and real.